safety, and I think public transport safety in general amid questions as to whether British Transport Police are too thinly stretched and if serious crimes like this are being deprioritised. We'll take your thoughts on that. Do you feel unsafe on public transport? And it's been revealed that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said more evidence that migrants from some nationalities are more likely to commit certain crimes. Why do you suppose that is? I mean, that's a cross-section of countries right there. Your thoughts on that as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Do you feel safe on public transport? I think we've all had one of those moments where, and sometimes you might laugh it off because there's some like half-wit who's high or half K-light or whatever, behaving like a bit of a, and you think, OK, I mean, this is just an idiot and they're probably not going to do anything, but there's a little bit of you that keep yourself in check. We've all been there. Generally speaking, would you say it has got any worse over the last couple of years? We do seem to be living in a world where violence and the randomness of horrendous attacks are taking place. And a statistician might educate me and say, actually, in, I don't know, 1959, it was even worse. Who knows? But it does feel like that. And what's your analysis of that in itself? Whether it's anger, mental health, bad intent, politics, whatever it happens to be, voices in your head, who knows? What do you sense is going on there? What we do know, and of course I should say at the outset, the finer details, once an arrest and a charge has been made in this respect, we can't go anywhere near that. We can talk more generally, and we know on Saturday the 625 from Doncaster will forever be etched in the minds of rail commuters, of victims, of staff and families. Just over an hour later, carnage as a knife-wielding man attacked and stabbed multiple people in a frenzied onslaught to passengers and staff. That is the allegation that has been set against a 32-year-old. We now know that this person was charged earlier today. 11 people receiving hospital treatment following the attack. One, a member of staff of the train, we understand in a critical but stable condition. So initially there were 2 people that were arrested. The police said there was nothing to suggest it was a terror incident, and the 35-year-old that was arrested happened because somebody had pointed in their direction. The police said it was reported in good faith, but they soon established this was an incident where they were looking for just one person. Witnesses reported the police using a taser. We know the details of this. They are absolutely horrific. They are absolutely terrifying, and a 32-year-old, now been named as Anthony Williams from Peterborough, has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder. So we can't specifically analyse the finer details of what people think they know, and that's probably a good thing. This weekend, as we've kind of got used to, that lame and disturbing spectacle that is social media turned into Miss Marple and God all in one go. The amount of alleged eyewitnesses with wildly differing stories was as astonishing as ever. You kind of should get used to it. It's a bit like walking into a sweet factory and complaining there's too much chocolate. I mean, it's obvious that social media will do this kind of stuff. There were 2 of them. There were 3 of them. It was a man wearing an Islamic clothing. The pair shouted Allah Akbar as they made their way through the train. Why aren't the mainstream media reporting this? Well, there's a good reason, because it is not true. But we are the media now, claim some on social media. Oh yeah, because you've got big numbers, that somehow authenticates your journalistic acumen, your ability to spot a story, to prejudge before charges, to prejudge before a court case. Is that how we do this? And now, something else we've got used to, and don't even ask me where we go with this, I can vaguely see, like all of these things, a kind of a scintilla, a grain of sand of reason behind this. But it doesn't really stand up. And it's this. We need to know who the assailant is, like nationality. Why do we need to know that, by the way? Why do I need to know? I do this for a living. frankly, any information is always helpful to know. But that legally, and the ethical nature of putting together a proper investigation. Why? I saw senior figures, political figures, asking for this. We need to know who this is. And I don't know what would happen if you found out who it was. And even if you did find out that it was a person that wasn't white, what is that taking you to? And if you find out it's a white person, oh, thank goodness for that. Oh, for a split second, I thought a load of people were stabbed by a non-white person. But now I know it's a white person, I can sleep easy now. I don't get that reason why, and political figures are calling for this. They say it clears the air in some way. I mean, it is not for me. When something happens, when a terrible incident takes place, whether it's this or anything else, the need for that little bit of information, I'm unsure as to why that would be required. And certainly what they laughingly call the mainstream media, by the way, that's the media, the rest are chancers and have-a-goers, and by the way, there are some good ones in the chancers and have-a-goers, not disputing that, but en masse, what you need is clarity, not this fog of disinformation that gets thrown around the Twitter sphere and Facebook and Insta and God knows where. I mean, it's just, if it was not so darn serious, it would just be laughable. And there is such a thing as due procedure, and there's a good reason for due procedure, and that's so we don't get carried away and people don't get misinformation and run away and start rioting or doing silly things or posting stuff that might prejudice a trial. There is a procedure. It's not always perfect, by the way, that procedure. Sometimes it is frustrating journalistically when there are things you can't say or report. But there are mostly, on balance, good reasons behind the structure we have in place when an incident takes place. That's why we have court cases. That's what they're designed for. I saw one person who frankly should know better. This took it to another level, saying we need to see the footage. The police should release the footage. I mean, seriously, what kind of messed up request is that? We need to see the footage of a mass stabbing? Seriously? I mean, what is going on there in that? For what reason would somebody need to see the footage? So what? So that kids who are legitimately allowed to go on Facebook and Instagram, so they can watch it before they go to school in the morning? Well, for what reason? Maybe you can, I get the frustration, I get the anger, I get there are times when people feel let down by the system. We all know that, but that isn't the answer. What is gained from knowing the nationality of the person who may or may not be responsible? 0344 499 1000. And I do want to speak on the wider issue of feeling safe on public transport. Because I think there are times when, even if you're a bloke, and, I wouldn't say that I would stand up to much scrutiny in a boxing ring. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd give it a good go. But boy, I can run. And there's that. So, yeah, we've all felt moments of this is a bit intimidating. I was on a train once when a fight broke out, and although nothing to do with anything other than the two people involved in the fight, it was enough to stop the train, and there were some younger people on there with their families, and it was brutal and it was violent and there was blood and there was a lot of bad language. It was terrifying. And the only thing that made it slightly more acceptable, that's the wrong word as well, but you take the point, was that it was at a platform so people could get off. 0344 499 1000. I get Alex's point that women are clearly in a much more vulnerable position than men, obviously, and that's sad. And you'd think by now, 21st century, that blokes would have grown out of unsavoury behaviour towards women, but it appears not. And there's too many people, again, online who will explain why it's kind of okay to play that male role with women. 0344 499 1000. There's a lot to get into on all of this. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Journalist and Sun columnist Dave Wooding is back with us. Dave, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us as ever.
Pleasure.
Let's start with that story we now know. As of this morning, the breaking news, 32-year-old man charged with 10 counts of attempted murder after a mass stabbing on a high-speed train. Let's have a listen to one eyewitness account who's talking about the horrifying scenes on Saturday.
They were making their way through the carriage to get away from the incident, from the suspect. They were extremely bloodied. That person ended up, when we pulled in, they were basically on the floor. We couldn't progress further down the train away from the suspect because that person ended up collapsing on the floor. So they were taken into an ambulance pretty much straight away.
And horrific for anybody who had to witness anything like that. Let's just hear a word as well, Dave, from the Mayor of Cambridge, who's called for tighter security measures in the light of this horrendous attack.
Quite often when you go to train stations at night or in the evening like this was, you see the gates open, don't you, all the time? And I doubt this individual actually bought a ticket, right? I mean, I'm speculating, but maybe if we had better security at train stations where gates were consistently closed, where there are access gates, maybe that would reassure people.
And Dave, it's interesting because you often wonder, is this about, do we just need more personnel? As the Mayor of Cambridge said, do you need more people manning the barriers, more guards in carriages? Not that they could ever be in in all of the carriages if there were 18 of them on a long train. Or do we just have to sadly write this off, that once in a while the human gene pool will throw up undesirable people, whether it's because of a mental health illness, whether it's because of political reasoning, but once in a while bad people will do bad things?
I think it's a bit like the plane crash theory, and we all travel on planes to holiday, and then we're horrified when one crashes. And the vast majority of the massively overwhelming majority of flights are perfectly safe. I think that's the same with the train journeys. How many train journeys are going on every day we hear nothing about? And this one makes the news because something horrific happens. But nevertheless, you still get these moments on trains, particularly on late night trains, where you feel uneasy, or you get some loud, aggressive, slightly bonkers person making a noise on the train, and you worry whether he or she is going to pull out a knife or start causing havoc. And I've seen cases where people have moved to the next carriage because somebody's just been talking a very loud voice and looking a little bit unstable. And yes, we all worry about that sort of thing. I don't know what you can do to prevent it, because it would put the cost of train travel through the roof if you had a guard in every carriage.
Of course.
So, you have to try and get a balance. And I have to say, I think the staff yesterday on this train behaved brilliantly. I mean, first of all, you had the man in the buffet car who put his life on the line, is critically injured as a result, undoubtedly saved many lives, going above and beyond the call of duty in his job. And then the train driver, Andrew Johnson, who was in the Royal Navy for 17 years and served in Iraq, who quickly thought that we should phone on ahead and get the train on, because it would have sped through Huntingdon, and he called on and made sure that the points were changed to get it onto the platform so he could get there quickly. So the staff behaved brilliantly, and the police. So luckily, everything.
And had that train driver not had that foresight, then God knows what might have happened. I mean, this could have been so much. I mean, as if it's not bad enough as it is, with multiple victims of stab wounds, and people in very life-changing and threatening positions now because of this. But that could have been 10 times the story had the train not been able to get to a station as the driver changed course so that could happen.
Yes, I don't know about you, Ian, but I was talking to my wife about what would you do in these circumstances? There were people who locked themselves in the buffet car and pulled the shutters down. There were others who were looking for ways to defend themselves. I mean, do you grab a bag when you get on and use that as a shield in some way? And in the same way we were talking about flights before, when you get on an airplane, you're always instructed to look for the nearest exit, so that in the very unlikely event of any need to escape quickly, you know where to go. I wonder whether people will actually start thinking this on trains. What can I grab hold of? Where can I run to? Where's the exit? Because people are undoubtedly unnerved by this, and it's not just, you were talking earlier, Ian, about rising crime and that the statistician may prove you wrong, but there is an overwhelming feeling that Britain is in the grip of some kind of crime wave where people, for various reasons, terrorism, religious reasons, and sheer madness, are attacking innocent people for no apparent reason in public. And that is a fear that is rapidly sweeping the country, which is, I think, one of the explanations as to why they were quick to tell us the nationality of these people, to try and wipe out the fact that is it a migrant.
Well, that was kind of post-Southport, wasn't it, where that became, and has since become not quite default everywhere, but certainly it seems that the police are quite quick at getting that information out there. I never know quite what that alleviates, though, Dave, because, I mean, you could argue that it might go the other way if you do get information out there and it appears to be somebody with a foreign name or the wrong colour or something. Does that mean people are going, oh, it's OK, we can riot now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think rioting would solve that problem in any way, shape or form.
Indeed.
It's a terrible tragedy.
Stay with us, Dave. We're going to be back with more stories. We'll talk Prince Andrew by way of a crunching gear change in a moment. And the staggering amount of tax paid by the average UK family over a lifetime. This will make you cry. Details coming next on Talk.
In order for it to hit the Home Office definition of a terrorist offence, there must be a motivation to spread terror. And that motivation must be driven by a particular ideology. And clearly what the police have discovered in the last 14, 15 hours is that that does not exist. Now, of course, they will still continue to try and establish why the people that committed this attack did it.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Do you feel safe on public transport? We're throwing that question out there this afternoon. What you expect from the media, or from the police rather, what the elements of the new media, that we are the media now, no, you're not, that group, who want more information on things. How much is right? I mean, what is wrong with the system we have in play at the moment? It's not always perfect, by the way, but is any system always perfect? We're looking at that story too. And Dave Wooding with us, Sun columnist and political journalist. Prince Andrew, of course, never far from the headlines, Dave, at the moment. When this all happened to Andrew, and I appreciate that, you know, it was right that he lost his titles. I don't know how many times you can go in with the boot on Andrew, because I mean he has lost his titles. He has lost his. There's talks of him losing his war medals or whatever it is, Falklands Medal and things like that. But I never thought he was going to starve, Dave. I never thought, poor fella, he's going to be. I'm going to see him outside John Lewis in Oxford Street, you know, asking for money over Christmas, and that turns out to be. Exactly the case. It looks as if he's going to vanish from public life and live in a 6-bedroom, security-gated, beautiful, opulent apartment in Abu Dhabi. So he's going to be doing all right, even if it's not the life he thought he was going to have. Yes,
well, the president of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh, let's call him Sheikh Mohammed. I'll forget the rest of the name. He's offered this place in the Sea Palace. It's a £10 million apartment or villa. It has 6 bedrooms with ensuite. It has gold taps and bathroom fittings. It's got a cinema in there and a lovely kitchen with cordon bleu staff to cook for him.
Nice.
So, you know, he will be, despite no longer, well, he is still 8th in line to the throne, but he will be actually living like a king.
Yeah.
In fact, the king will be looking at this with envy.
Well, I would have thought so, because he won't have any of the responsibility. It's 35-degree 9/10 of the year, so you know it's a nice climate. It's, you know, there's a lot going on. Worst places to be. I don't think many people would consider that a fall from grace in the conventional sense, but not what he would have ideally wanted, I guess.
No, and there's nothing for him here now. I mean, he is, you know, one of the most unpopular figures in Britain at the moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he moves to that place in Sandringham, he's going to be a prisoner in his own home, because he can't really go out because there are public roads crossing the estate, and people are just going to be looking at him, taking pictures of him, shouting abuse at him, I guess. He's on a hiding to nothing by staying here. So he can go and start a new life over there, I guess.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing about Abu Dhabi is there are very, very strict privacy laws, so nobody would be able to print anything about what he's doing. So he'd be able to live the life of Riley without anybody writing about it or featuring it.
Yeah.
So,
and never having to work as well, because I'm sure there's a stash of cash in the bank as well. So I mean, that's, you know, all put together. It's not a bad package, is it? It's the kind of thing they give away on one of those Amaze things. You know, it's like, it sounds like a good deal to me.
I guess you give away your peerage in if you could go and live over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't been in the House of Lords for months now, so yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's move to this story, Dave. This won't surprise some people. Research showing the average family will hand over nearly £1.3 million in taxes over their lifetime, including £600,000 in income tax. This, of course, as Rachel Reeves seeks the additional revenue. The findings come a month before her budget, where it's expected to announce further income tax increases. But the Chancellor, of course, previously, unequivocally, has promised us the numbers in the budget will add up and we won't be overtaxed. Have a listen to Boomerang Rach.
Our tax rises coming down the track.
Yeah, but I think that this government are making... Sorry, in terms of the ambition of this government, it is big.
But you agreed, yes, there are tax rises coming down the track.
Well, I was really clear during the general election campaign, and we discussed this many times, that I would always make sure that the numbers add up.
Can you promise the British people you're not going to get stuck in a doom loop of having to go through this cycle every year of having to find more tax to fill
I think
the black hole.
nobody wants that cycle to end more than I do, Sam. That's why that is why we're putting all the effort into growing our economy, because that in the end is what brings in the tax revenues to be able to afford to keep taxes low.
I mean, Dave, if you wanted an example of somebody simply not answering a question, there it was. I mean, that was a masterclass in the old art of political obfuscation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was only 16 months ago that Rachel Reeves told us that she didn't come into politics to increase taxes for working people. Now we've got the highest tax burden in 80 years since records began in 1948, I think it was. And she's coming back for more in about 23 days' time on November the 26th. So, yes, this survey by the Taxpayers Alliance really does drive home how much tax we're already paying.
Yeah.
And if she's going to hit us with more, we'll need to see some something to mitigate that in cuts. But of course, all the cuts that we've asked for, the bloated £300 billion welfare budget, they haven't touched that. And when they tried to do that, there was a big hoo-ha with the left of the party blocking it and threatening to rebel. So people will be rightly asking, where are all my taxes going to?
Yeah.
If we're paying £600,000 over a lifetime by a family, where's it all going? All they see is it going on migrant hotels, paying bungs to foreign criminals to be deported, and going off to the union paymasters to pay big pay rises for the public sector. Yeah. They want to see something back, the government providing something for this money and also making some cuts so that we're not just pouring more money into the black hole she's created.
Just a final one here, Dave. We'll have to be brief on this, but
Sure.
It's been revealed that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from just a handful of countries: Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said there was yet more evidence that migrants from some nationalities are more likely to commit certain crimes. Let's have a listen to Rupert Lowe, the MP, who said this morning that the government are failing to protect British people.
I think the country's had enough now of listening to the crocodile tears after this has happened. What we need is a government that is actually elected to look after and protect the interests of the British people. The problem is we've got all these human rights lawyers who seem to indulge their fantasies and not keep us safe. And when this sort of thing happens, I think that we can argue the British state is complicit in a crime like this, because they haven't done enough to protect our borders. They haven't done enough to deport illegal immigrants, both those arriving and those living here. They haven't done enough to deport foreign criminals in our country. And it's quite clear to me that a lot of the people who are coming in here don't share our culture. They don't respect our culture. They're a danger to the honest, decent, tax-paying, law-abiding citizen of this country. And the primary role of our government should be to protect those people, not allow this sort of thing to happen.
It is interesting. I don't know what we make of this, Dave, but, I mean, 5 countries responsible for a quarter of sex offences in terms of jailed foreign sex offenders.
Yes, and the proportion of them who are in prison for sex offences outweighs those who are in prison for other offences. So you've got about 10% of foreign criminals who are locked up in for sex offences, where it's something like 3.5, 3.8% of indigenous Britons. Yeah. And then if you look at Bangladeshis, of all the Bangladeshis who are in prison, 4 out of 10 are in for sex offences. So yes, I think it's right to say it's a cultural thing. I mean, if for instance you've got people coming here from Sudan, and I think the Sudanese are among that, they're going through a horrific war at the moment, and you know, my heart goes out to the people living there and escaping. But you know, you sometimes wonder whether people are desensitized to the torture and the rape and the things they witness when they're over there. So yeah, while I think foreign people coming here perfectly behave themselves is perfectly fine, but sometimes it just makes you wonder what they're coming from to our country and the way of life.
100% of a kind of cultural clashes, and I think what we scream out for is really for governments just to recognise that. It doesn't mean anyone. You'd have to be a lunatic to go, that means that all Bangladeshis or all the Irish do this, that, or the other. Anyone with a brain knows that isn't the case. But why would we ignore these numbers if they could be helpful to us going forward in terms of making our country safer? I think that would be, a completely reasonable, I hope, an intelligent way to move forward on this. Dave, we hit the clock. Always great to have you on. Thank you, Dave Wooding, political journalist, Sun columnist with us here on the programme. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. A lot to get into with anything you've just heard there. The question about public safety on transport. Do you feel safe when you use public transport, whether you're on a bus, a tram, a train, an underground, wherever it happens to be? Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note on that number too. Just gone 1:30. This is Talk. It is interesting, the kind of divide between what is the media now. We are the media. We constantly hear that one. This came in from Just Me, who says the reason Tusi, and I'm sure he's speaking about Maya Tusi, who's a kind of YouTuber and social media presence. The reason he gets the numbers is because most people are sick of the BS spouted by MSN, mainstream media, and biased left-wing platforms disguised as the People's Station when we know it's propaganda to appease certain demographics to not make waves. Look, I don't know, Just Me, maybe you work in the media in some area. That's not a media I've ever worked in. I work in a media, having worked in the commercial sector pretty much all my life, 30 years, and dabbled for half an hour in the BBC. I don't know where that view comes from. However, I don't blame some people for getting I suppose when the media let themselves down, particularly when it's the BBC, and we're going to talk about them a little later in the show, I understand and can see that the kind of the waves that it creates of mistrust if something isn't said. But it is, why are you not talking about this? Why are you not talking about it? It's a bit like that boring person at a wedding that goes up to the DJ and goes, why aren't you playing anything that's good when there's 500 people on a dance floor? Everyone has their own idea of what should be a priority, of what is more important. And one person's idea is not the same as the next person's idea. The kind of social media stuff, some of it is great, by the way. There's some really good accounts, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on X or other places. I don't dispute that, but they're mostly opinionists rather than journalists. And there's nothing wrong with opinionists, but what we shouldn't be doing is trying to compare the two very often. Sometimes, obviously, an opinionist or a polemicist, whatever you want to call them, there's no pejorative in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it has to be made clear you can't put some of the stuff that goes up and then call yourself a journalist, because it's not sourced. No one's sourced it. No one's gone for second source, third source, fourth source, having it legaled, all the stuff you'd have to do in a newsroom to make sure that it's completely legit and fine to go. None of that stuff happens. And yeah, it's people's opinion in a digital world where we have you can't stop that. Neither would I want to. It might be infuriating from time to time, but we have to call it what it is. Opinionists as distinct from journalists. Sometimes there's a crossover, quite often there isn't. And I would suggest that the latter is more prevalent than anything. And when I look at what happened at the weekend, and you look at the amount of absolute tosh that was said by people claiming to be journalists, by the way, claiming to be the new media, you look at that and you think, yeah, that doesn't quite stack up. And I wonder in what world you thought that was okay just to say that or print that when there's an ongoing case. But it's an opinion, as distinct from fact, and that should be always pointed out. And I hope that's a reasonable response. I hope that's, I know why some people lose trust in things, but I think you can get carried away with always believing that to be the case. Let's move to this story then, the one we've been talking about, the 32-year-old man charged with 10 counts of attempted murder after that mass stabbing on a high-speed train on Saturday. Let's have a listen to one eyewitness account.
They were making their way through the carriage to get away from the incident, from the suspects. They were extremely bloodied. That person ended up, when we pulled in, they were basically on the floor. We couldn't progress further down the train away from the suspect because that person ended up collapsing on the floor. So they were taken into an ambulance pretty much straight away.
And naturally, these kind of moments, these horrific incidents, do quite clearly compromise your sense of safety, and concern is rising when it comes to public transport. Questions about whether British Transport Police are too thinly stretched and if serious crimes like this are being deprioritised. The Mayor of Cambridge spoke to Talk a little earlier, talking about the need for tighter security measures on trains following this attack. Have a listen.
Quite often when you go to train stations at night or in the evening like this was, you see the gates open, don't you, all the time. And I doubt this individual actually bought a ticket, right? I mean, I'm speculating. But maybe if we had better security at train stations where gates were consistently closed, where there are access gates, maybe that would reassure people.
That could be one move. Let's speak to Chris Phillips first, former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Chris, good afternoon to you. I mean, I said at the beginning of all of this, if there is somebody who is hell-bent on carnage and death and destruction, is there anything that can really be done to stop that? Or once in a while do we have to just kind of settle on the rather grim reality that there are clearly mad or evil or unpleasant people, mixture of all three, that live among us?
Well, of course, you can protect certain locations, Ian, but the transport network would be impossible to keep completely safe. It is just a part of our society. You can walk on at all these small stations. I think a lot of work is done actually at the major train stations across the country. Not enough. And not enough will be done because there's just not the staff to do it. And we've reduced the numbers of police officers. British Transport Police, like every other police force in the country, do not have enough officers. And that's why we don't see them patrolling as much as we'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. But again, I suppose someone who's intent on doing bad stuff, no amount of security or additional personnel can ever fully stop that. You can never guarantee it won't happen.
No, and these sorts of things are quite rare. I think one of the big issues now, I think we probably have actually less crime than we've had over the years. But what we have now is crime that's very much more brazen, and it's multiplied by the fact that it's shown on videos, TVs, it's shown on everyone's TikTok and YouTube and everything else. So a single crime is multiplied much more than it ever has been in the past, and that raises the fear of crime, and the fear of crime is what we all fear. And the simple thing is, you know, that if you're frightened of crime, then it does affect how you live your life, and we need to do something about that.
Do we live in more dangerous times, or does it just feel like that?
Do you know, I actually think we probably don't. There's always been crime. You know, I can go back 30 years policing the streets of London, and there were some terrible people around. Awful things were happening, but they don't get the media coverage that they get these days. And I think we do have a particular issue at the moment with knife crime. But that, again, it's a multiplied effect, because if you're a kid and you're frightened, then you tend to want to carry a knife to protect yourself, which then causes more problems than it ever solves. So have we got more crime than ever? We've got a different type of crime. We've got much more brazen. We've got much more instant violence than we've had in the past, I think. And as I said before, it's now been seen across multiple parts of our life.
Indeed. Chris, thank you for your time. Always appreciated. Chris Phillips, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Let's speak with James Treadwell, Professor of Criminology, University of Staffordshire. James, good afternoon to you. I mean, let's start on that point, you know, perception versus reality and all the rest of it. I did say right at the top of the show, I'm sure, you know, when we talk about these horrendous incidents, they are, you know, shown on social media. Instantly, there's people speculating, usually adding 2 and 2 together and making 29. There's lots of that going on. But we do see graphic images, which, you know, once upon a time we would never have seen, broadcasters would never have shown. So we certainly have a perception that things are bad. What's the reality out there?
I think the reality is complex in some ways, and I agree with some of what Chris was saying previously. You know, in terms of a headline figure, levels of violent crime, particularly the worst forms of violent crime, like homicide, have been falling. But I think at the same time as that, we need to look beyond the reported crime statistics as well, because I think they capture, you know, sometimes only how often the police open and shut the car door and intervene. And a lot of the time now, we don't have the authorities there to do that intervention. We also ought to remember that, you know, headline government policy has been freeing offenders earlier from prison custody. We've seen whole swathes of crime, in effect, decriminalised, from the frequency that we see shoplifting and shop theft, all manner of sort of antisocial public order type offences. And that question on the ticketing, you know, and again, purely speculatively in this case, but we ought to remember that what happens with offenders generally is they tend to break the law in a whole array of different contexts. Yeah. So people who will carry drugs, people who will carry knives will not buy train tickets, for example, you know. But the ability to kind of clamp down on that low-level disorder simply isn't there at the moment, because we have a justice system that is coming apart at the seams. We have huge delays for Crown Court trials. We've got prison spaces under immense amounts of pressure, hence the release of thousands of prisoners early. We've got police numbers absolutely stretched. And we mentioned British Transport Police, but British Transport Police, unlike the mainstream police, are funded on a different model. They're funded, for example, by train operators, Network Rail and the train companies. Those companies have been making huge amounts of profit, but the capacity for police to be there to deal with crime on the rail network is still lower, you know. So I think that there's a complex picture, but let's not forget that we're talking 49,600 knife crimes last year, the government claiming a huge amount of success because that was a 1% fall. But in actuality, reality, if we look over a longer time period, if we look over 10 years, an 81% increase in offences involving knives and sharp weapons. And while I think it was right to flag that the level of violence overall has fallen, if we look at some of the most horrendous examples that we've seen, where we've seen mass attacks on members of the public, if we look, for example, at Southport, or we look at what happened with Valdo Coltrane in Nottingham, you know, there's the emergence of this kind of random, nasty violence that targets people, which particularly enhances, I think, that feeling of a lack of safety and security.
Is there a kind of copycatness about this in a curious way? I mean, I always think of high school shootings in the United States, where you are drawn inevitably to believe, you know, you've got a kid that's like, I don't know, he's gone off the rails, he's angry, he wants revenge. There's a number of things they could do, I suppose. They could, you know, harm themselves, they could take it out on a building, but this sort of default position from a small group, it should be said, but nonetheless hugely significant in terms of the impact and the trauma and horror, who tend to go, oh, let's do a high school shooting. If nobody had ever done a high school shooting in our history, I doubt whether we'd see one today. But that seems to be the copycat nature of things. Are we seeing something similar over here in terms of, you know, those that are either angry, it might be a mental health issue, it might be politics, whatever it happens to be, are choosing barbarity and carnage as their method of getting this out there?
I think there may well be something in that contagion effect, in effect, you know, and I mentioned Nottingham and Southport, and that is only two. But it was interesting, wasn't it, that the debate around Huntingdon was, in the first instance, is it terrorism or is it just knife crime? The reality is that, you know, I think in the public's eyes, in some ways, that matters little. Whether you look at terrorist offenders like Usman Khan at Fishmonger Hall or the attack on Borough Market, the way that was done was largely with knives. You know, knives are the weapons that are used by offenders, whether it be knife crime or county lines or the 262 homicides involving a knife or a sharp implement, which, you know, it invariably also includes more homicides of young people in poor and deprived inner city areas, where, again, stop and search is perhaps a good way of dealing with that, but then often isn't used. And I do think that there is something of a kind of contagion effect around knife crime, much as we see sort of spikes of suicide after suicides. You know, these are incredibly profile crimes that then get a great deal of media attention. And I think that there is a danger that, although for the vast majority of rational, decent people, they would never think in such a way, for a small number of people out there who are a very, very high risk, whether that be ideological or it be mental health, the danger is that is quite inspirational for them, and it does push them towards, like I say, these horrendous kind of offences that we see.
100%. James, thank you for your time this afternoon. James Treadwell, Professor of Criminology, University of Staffordshire. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Matrix Breaker, I should give him his full tag, says, Mr. Collins, I see on today's show you're currently taking the P out of independent journalists regarding info on the train stabbing attacker. Perhaps you'd like to comment on this and apologise. I'm not taking the P. I'm contextualising what it is. Well, this is another, and by the way, the footage that Matrix has sent me, which is, you know, meant to be an attacker in a previous setting, I can only say that for legal reasons, I first heard about, by the way, on what you would call mainstream media. I didn't see that on social media at all until a little later. I first heard that about 6:30 this morning. I've also seen about 8 different videos purporting to be the attacker, but different people. So you begin to see the confusion of it. I'm not suggesting, I mean, you'd like to say people should tread carefully. You can't educate someone who's not a journalist to do that, because each time you do it, you know, you can post whatever you like, but you do potentially put a court case in jeopardy if you do it. Now, what are you meant to do? I don't think you throw somebody in jail for saying, oh, my mate who owns a shop has got CCTV of somebody robbing it. Look, that robber had clearly done it before. You couldn't do that on mainstream media because that would jeopardise a court case. It's not the way it works. You can't stop somebody from doing it. So it's difficult. But yes, that was mentioned on MSN, as you would call it. MSM, sorry. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It's the first time I've, can recollect this sort of incident on a train where you can't exactly get off. It's like an aeroplane in that regard, isn't it? You can't exactly get off. But what I would say is quite often when you go to train stations at night or in the evening like this was, you see the gates open, don't you, all the time. And I doubt this individual actually bought a ticket, right? I mean, I'm speculating. But maybe if we had better security at train stations where gates were consistently closed, where there are access gates, maybe that would reassure people.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Mike says, would you be able to show footage of an alleged attacker doing something else prior to the... No, we wouldn't. We literally would not be allowed to do that. You could heavily contextualise it, perhaps, but you wouldn't be able to do it. You'd be fined out of your pants for doing it and probably taken off air for doing it as well, because it would just breach every rule in the book. But you can't, put the genie back in the bottle of social media, and I'm not even suggesting you can. I'm just contextualising what it is. Let's go to your calls. Over here, Louise in Kent. What have you got for us, Louise? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Harry, and we've spoken before.
We have.
Yes, what I was going to say about this case was interesting you're saying about how should we know who's a person, ethnicity, etc. Now, of course, that's all come about after the Southport. But what is interesting is the problem, actually, I think, is social media half the time, because it doesn't matter what we're told, somebody will always invent something which then goes ballistic, bananas, and all sorts of rubbish. And this one, I mean, they said, he was a black Caribbean or African descent, born in this country. Well, so was Axel Gibrana. So you can't just say that's who it was, because it doesn't necessarily follow that. And yet it won't stop.
What? Yeah, I don't know what is even gained by having that information.
No, well, I don't either, because it's social media that's the problem, not by telling us who it is. Because it doesn't matter what anybody says, social media could fire it.
Well, one of the main reasons behind social media, and remember, when people say, why are you not talking about this, and then they post a video, or, as somebody has just sent to me or something, that it's not, they're only repeating what they've seen somebody else post. So it's not even their post. They go, why are you not saying, look, there's the evidence. And you think, well, OK, that might be true. It might not be true. You've got to source it first. You've got to work out where it's from, when it's from, and X, Y, Z.
You said when you first started, it's been absolutely littered with people saying, well, I was an eyewitness and I was there and everything else. This is what happened.
Unbelievable. Yeah. There were 2 people, there were 3 people, there were 4 people I saw on one clip on social media. One man claiming that his followers had sent him multiple. They all shouted in unison, Allah Akbar, before carrying out this. All this stuff just didn't happen. But if you go on social... And I think one of the problems with social media, Louise, is that it's actually, at one level, it's quite simple. People just want to be the first to say it. They want to think they've got some information, like when you go into the pub and go, guess what I've heard? And you're the first to say it, even though simultaneously 5,000 other people have also said it, and 5,000 other people also got it horribly wrong. Louise, I've got to move because the news is literally upon us. Thank you for that. Equally confused about what we need to know after a crime has been committed. Look, the process we have, somebody's investigated, somebody's caught, somebody's charged, and somebody goes to court. Mostly works, not always perfect. I understand it. More calls on the way. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the home of common sense. As you will now be aware, a 32-year-old man has now been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder after that mass stabbing on a high-speed train. Concern rising now among Brits over train safety, amid questions too as to whether British transport police are too thinly stretched and if serious crimes like this are being deprioritised. Your thoughts on that, and how or do you even feel safe on public transport these days? Also this afternoon, it's been revealed that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from just 5 countries: Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India. What do you extrapolate from those statistics? Quite a varied, culturally speaking, if nothing else, varied 5 countries in that list. And it's been revealed that Prince Andrew was offered a use of lavish, fully staffed Abu Dhabi palace by the UAE royals. This comes after the mounting pressure for him to vacate his Windsor residence Royal Lodge. He's not going to starve, is he? I mean, he's going to be absolutely fine. I think we can say he's going to be all right. And some people would be more than happy if they thought that was the worst their life was going to get. A 6-bedroom gaff in Abu Dhabi. Not bad. 0344 499 1000. Omar says, why is everybody scared to bring up your huge rise in stranger/gang rape? I don't know, to be honest. I've not seen any stats on the issue of gang rape or even whether there's been a rise in rapes. I know there's some statistics about murder in some cities. They go down, in other places they go up. I think blazon wanton carrying of a knife is 100% on the increase. I'd stick my hand on the holy book and say that anywhere. There's no doubt about that. This is beyond anecdotal evidence. There are places where people feel incredibly unsafe. I know sometimes statistics don't always bear that out. Kids being snatched by a stranger, for example, not a family member or connected to the family, complete stranger, snatched out of nowhere, those kind of. I understand that the statistics for that crime, as this is just an example about how stats work, I suppose, has never changed since they started recording it 30, 40 years ago. It's a rare occurrence and still, thankfully, is. As for the other stuff that Omar raises there, I don't know what the numbers are on that. I'm sure we could find out. There is lots to talk about here, and of course we now know, among other things, as I mentioned a second ago, it's been revealed a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India. I'm genuinely intrigued by that mixture of countries. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said this was more evidence that migrants from some nationalities are more likely to commit certain crimes. It's hard to disagree with that when it's staring you in the face. Let's speak with Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. Alex, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Great to be with you.
Nice to have you. We'll talk about the public transport safety issue in a second, because of course you're a London politician. Of course London is the epicentre of commuters. We'll come to that in a moment. Just on this first story, I know that Reform have talked a lot and don't hide away from talking a lot about foreign criminals and what the issues behind it are, the statistics behind it. And we learned today that we've got a quarter of foreign sex offenders, this is just sex offenders, coming from 5 specific countries. What do you make of that, Alex?
Yeah, well, first thing to do is congratulate the Telegraph for submitting the FOIs to get that information in the first place. This is information that really ought to be publicly available by default, but it's not. You know, the government doesn't like releasing this kind of information because they don't want people to know and they don't want people to talk about it. But no, well done for the Telegraph in getting that. It's not surprising that there are certain offences where we do have a higher proportion of offenders from certain countries and backgrounds. But the thing is, what do we do about it? We've got nearly 11,000 foreign offenders in British jails. We know we have a jail overcrowding crisis. Had the government early releasing dangerous prisoners who then going on to offend again, and even just in the last week or so, someone's been charged with murder, having been released early under the government scheme. The first duty of a government is to keep its people safe, and this government is not doing that. One way they could try and do that is rather than releasing prisoners early, deporting foreign prisoners, send them back to where they should be, and where which is not here clogging up our jails, and then you've got the space in those jails to keep people in for longer that need to be kept there.
And what in terms of these statistics, I suppose the reason why politicians shun away from this is so that there isn't this kind of pile-on that every time you meet, for example, a Bangladeshi, you're going to go, he's probably a sex offender, when he's probably not a sex offender. It's just that statistically, that particular group had the highest proportion jailed for sex offences, 42.3% of 130 prisoners. That's over double the British rate. Now, you can wear two hats on this, can't you, Alex? You can acknowledge that, of course, the average person, the average Bangladeshi, is probably the person that owns your curry house, by the way, who are mostly Bangladeshi-owned, as distinct from Indian, a common misconception. But nonetheless, we can't run away from that stat, that 42.3%, almost half of those prisoners that are from that country have carried out a sex offence, double what you would expect in a population. We can't ignore that.
We can't ignore it. We shouldn't ignore it. And sunlight is the best disinfectant, isn't it? So the more information people have and that the government are prepared to share with people, the easier it will be to find solutions to deal with these problems. And that cuts right across the board of all kinds of offences, and not just criminal offences, but just policy generally. The more information people have, the better informed they will be, and the more likely we'll end up with workable solutions.
Indeed. Let's move to this horrendous story over the weekend. Of course, somebody has now been charged, so we're limited on what we can say specifically about the case. It won't stop social media doing what it always does, and the speculation there is rife. However, in the real world, we know that a man has been charged with 11 counts of attempted murder after this horrifying attack. Now, this, of course, has left 11 people injured to varying degrees, some very, very badly and clearly life-changing. But in terms of safety, now this has come up a lot. We know that your neck of the woods, looking after your area, Alex, and the debates you have at the London Assembly about transport, which normally falls on deaf ears with the Mayor of London. But understandably, if you're using, for example, the tube late at night, I don't imagine everybody feels completely safe in that situation.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, this incident that happened over the weekend, absolutely terrifying, and everyone's thoughts are with the victims as they make their recovery. And obviously, we've heard that the suspect has now been charged, and that will work its way through the system. But you're right. There's a question more widely about safety on the transport network. Thankfully, events like Saturday nights are very, very rare, but that doesn't mean that the transport network is completely safe. It's not. We had, just in the first half of this year alone, almost 24,000 criminal offences reported on the TfL network, so that's the tubes, buses, and some of the rail lines as well. And the bulk of those are theft, but that will also include a large number of sexual offences and some violent offences as well. And you're right, a lot of people don't feel safe on the network, particularly late at night when it's perhaps less busy, there's fewer other people around who might be able to intervene if an incident happens. And people have got every right to look to the mayor and the police to do more to try and make us feel safe. And one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is the use of stop and search. In the last 3 years, the use of stop and search on London streets has halved. That was something that the Met Commissioner, Mark Rowley, admitted a few months ago at one of the meetings I was at. And at the same time, the level of knife crime, recorded knife crime, has gone up every single year since the pandemic and is now roughly 2/3 higher than it was when Sadiq Khan was first elected. Now, I think that's a great tool, a technique to get weapons off the street. It's not the only thing the police should be doing, but it is certainly a weapon that should be in their arsenal as they try and tackle that. And if we're doing things like that less, it's no surprise that more weapons and knives are out there, and then you've got the potential for things like this to happen. But also just the general kind of feeling and culture on the network. I don't know if you're unfortunate enough to make great use of either the Bakerloo line or the Central line, but those two lines in particular, the condition of the carriages is absolutely filthy, top to toe, covered in graffiti. That creates an oppressive kind of environment in which you don't feel safe. Fare evasion, huge issue right across the network. If your first act on joining the transport network is to barge your way through the barrier and commit an offence doing so, there's every likelihood that your next act on the network will also be to commit a more serious offence. So we've got to get to grips with these problems. The Mayor's got to take a lead on that. That's what he's elected to do, but that's what he's failing to do.
100%. Listen, Alex, thank you very much indeed for your time. Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Lots to get through. You want to comment on that question about feeling safe on public transport? I have to say, if I was sitting on the tube, then I would feel, probably 100%. I would feel probably quite vulnerable late at night, and that would be, a pretty, I think I'd speak for most people, pretty unsavoury state in the 21st century, that late at night on a tube on your own. I think that is a moment when you, and particularly as a woman, I think you would feel naturally, you just feel, wouldn't you, that you're up against it if something were to happen. And we've all seen and witnessed other incidents, and you do think there, but for the grace of God. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Richard in Hertfordshire. Richard, what have you got for us?
Ian, good afternoon. I just feel, Ian, that hello?
Hello?
Are you there?
Yes, are you?
Okay, yeah, I am. Yeah, I just feel that this recent attack is just going to encourage others. And what I don't understand is why, almost throughout Europe, pepper spray is certainly legal there, but it's illegal here. Yeah. And you're never going to kill anybody with pepper spray. I can go out and buy a matchet, but I can't, in the UK, go out and buy just a normal European type pepper spray, and I don't understand why.
Well, I guess the short answer on all of that is that it would be purchased by the wrong people and used against others for, clearly violent reasons rather than self-defence ones.
Well, yes, but as I say, it is not like a knife. Yeah. A knife can kill you very easily.
True.
Pepper spray will not kill you.
Where is pepper spray? Do you know where it is legal?
Oh, totally, in France. You've only got to drive 9 miles or whatever under in the tunnel, and you can buy one, and you put it in your pocket and bring it back. But it is illegal. But it is not illegal there. It is not illegal in Spain. It is not illegal in the States. And I do not understand why, in the climate that we're living in and about to move into, because, as I say, this latest attack is no doubt going to encourage others, those who are able to, create and have already shown what they're prepared to do with regard to our community. And I do think that you've got to make it possible for people to carry a deterrent, not a knife, but a deterrent that is in no way going to be able to kill anybody.
Listen, I hear it. Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. And I do, again, come back to what I was saying a moment ago, that if you're a vulnerable female, or if you're a female late at night on a train, I understand why you'd feel that vulnerability. And, as blokes, we've all witnessed stuff, and we've also felt that sense of, is somebody going to give me a smack in the bracket for literally no good reason? Tim is down in London. Tim, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, the point I'd like to make is, with regards to this prevalence of crime which we see, including knife crime, if we track back a bit to policing, if you look at the verb to police, it means to monitor and maintain order. And what we've created instead is a police service, because they like to call it a service, not a force, a police service that firefights. And the mentality is to chase villains once it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
The visible presence of police on the street, and in particular, I have to say, on trains, is non-existent. We have had a change of mindset for police officers, that they are not there to provide the visible presence and therefore deterrent. They are waiting for a crime to happen and then go and try and trace the perpetrator and bring them to justice. That's not what policing is actually about. Policing is there to prevent crime. You prevent crime by putting the visible presence of a police officer on the street or on a train.
That's true. So but how many can we have, though, Tim?
Well,
that's the problem, isn't it?
Of course, it's pie in the sky that you have a police officer on every police carriage, on every train carriage, but the reality is that I commuted in and out of London for 10 years. I've just stopped doing it. And in that time, I saw a police officer on a carriage once. That's in 10 years. So I reiterate the point, and I wish senior police officers would acknowledge this, that they have lost track of what they're actually...
But did we ever have police officers on trains?
Yes, yeah. British Transport Police do provide and put police officers on trains. But
I mean, I know that once in a while, I mean, if you went out today in certain areas, you'd probably find cops on trains. I get that. But generally speaking, you see a ticket inspector or a guard. You don't usually see a police officer.
You don't, and which kind of reinforces the point that policing is there to prevent crime happening, not to chase villains once it's happened.
Yeah.
So, I just wish senior police officers would recognise the idea of what the word police means. Policing is a verb to monitor and maintain order. It's not just to...
After the event. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it. Tim, thank you very much indeed for that great call. 0344 499 1000. Do you feel safe on public transport? Your thoughts on the wider issues around all of this. What the media or how the media report things also on the list too. Lines are open. This is Talk.
About 250 or so knife-enabled homicides a year. it's far too high. Now, there were reductions in police numbers after 2010 because of the financial mess the previous Labour government left behind. But when I was police minister in the last couple of years of the last government, we recruited a lot more police officers, and we actually left government a year and a half ago with record ever numbers of police. It was 149,769 on March the 31st, 2024. Unfortunately, since then, under Labour, it has started going down.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And some breaking news. We're just hearing that at the weekend, Anthony Williams, who we now know has been charged with 11 counts of attempted murder, has now been charged with a further account, allegedly stabbing a 14-year-old boy the day before this attack. Cambridgeshire Constabulary said the teenager was attacked in Peterborough on Friday, what is believed to be one of 3 knife-related incidents carried out by the 32-year-old. The force said he suffered minor injuries and was later discharged. So that's the latest that we have on that. And, of course, further details as we get it. Back to your calls. Mark is in Lincolnshire. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. Hi there, mate. Yeah, what it is, I actually spoke a little bit with Peter yesterday about this as well. Regarding the train thing, how can we make people feel safe? Well, the thing is, we're living in a country where, I mean, basically, the state has, over the decades, disarmed the public, okay, with guns, with basically anything. So you're essentially just walking the streets as you walk the streets. You know, you can't really protect yourself unless you're particularly a nice big bloke or something, you know. Yeah. You can't really do a lot. That's the reality that we live in. Whereas, obviously, your criminals, your terrorists, all these people, they don't really give a stuff about laws. They're more than happy to wander around with a nice big machete or even a gun or whatever. You know, they'll pick whatever weapon of choice. They don't really care whether Keir Starmer says, well, you shouldn't own one of these. You know what I mean? It makes no difference to them. So we're in a situation where, because of the state's inability to allow the public to protect themselves, even at a basic level, you know, I'm talking non-lethal means here, we're at a point where we're nothing more than lambs to the slaughter. It's just a matter of time waiting for, you know, the next incident at the end of the day, and the sheer look of the draw, whether you happen to be part of it or not.
But do you think, on that point, Mark, do you think people have got... I mean, we said at the beginning, if you spoke to a statistician, they might go, do you know what, these incidents are not more common than they ever were. I think that violent incidents are. They're not always as bad as this, but I do think that we've got an increase in a lawlessness sense, particularly, you know, gang culture and God knows what else, people who are losing their mind, and I don't say that as a pejorative, I mean genuinely speaking, people who want to make a political statement. So there's loads of different reasons on it. I sense it has probably got worse, but there might be a stat out there that says, actually, it hasn't, so why are we all worried?
Well, what has got 100% statistically way worse than it ever was is sexual crimes. So sexual assaults, that kind of thing. And it's not just by migrants and what have you, obviously, but that's a particular different kind of problem, I think, in some respects. Yeah. Obviously, the crimes are very similar, but tend to be different in the sense of the way it's carried out, perpetrated, I think. But the reality is those particular kind of crimes, again, I'll say the same thing again. You know, we're just letting women and girls just wander the streets with zero ability to actually protect themselves or to at least for me, my personal preference is something like pepper spray. That's what I would like to see legalised. I think, it's not an ideal solution to every situation. It still requires quite close contact with somebody. But it can give somebody the chance to get away. It can maybe allow members of the public to subdue an assailant. This is a basic, as far as I'm concerned, it's a basic right. As I say, as far as I care, a state that persistently disarms its public and tells them they're bad if they want to try and protect themselves, even though knowing quite fine well that the state can't protect them.
Yeah.
Because even if you call the police, you're still looking at 5, 15, 20, 30 minutes before you might see a copper turn up, depending on where the situation's happening. So we're in the situation, like I say, at the end of the day, Ian, we're a little more than lance the sword. It's just a matter of chance of how severe it's going to be. Again, we have a state that's, disarmed us whilst at the same time they're importing people from the worst parts of the world. They've neglected, really, really serious mental health issues that some people have got.
So there's a perfect combination of things going on. Listen, Mark, I've got to run because I want to get more comment on before the break. Great call as ever. Mark in Lincolnshire, Matt's in Cheshire. What are you making of all of this transport safety, Matt? Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. I would feel quite safe where I am because we're one of those rare sort of throwback British enclaves where we're not overrun with immigration. But as for what the last caller said, we bowed enough to these people now, to the violent and the psychotic. And mental health issues don't make an excuse for somebody being violent. And it's time, when the human rights law goes and the police can smash these people appropriately, which is what is needed, the violent fear one thing, and that's violence against them. So rather than pandering and us all becoming Americanized and changing the way we live, we've already got car ramming bollards because of Islamic terrorism. What's next? We all have to wear stab vests on the train, and it's lunacy. And the more we bow to them, the more Labour wins. This is what Labour want. They're emboldening the violent.
Why would they want stabbings on a train?
Because these are the people, remember, that defended, that sent a letter to stop the deportation of sex offenders and murderers to Jamaica.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm not suggesting there's not some absolute doolally merchants just sitting on the Labour benches. There's loads of, but as a government, they can't surely want people to be murdered and maimed.
Has Keir Starmer mentioned the woman that was stabbed with a screwdriver, or the man that was killed in the other week by the guy outside the hotel?
But I don't know. But do we ever have that commentary from a Prime Minister on every incident, I guess? We don't, do we?
If any Prime Minister in the last few weeks should have said, right, it's time to put the army on the street.
Well, I agree. I agree with the sentiment, but I sense this predates Keir Starmer, I think, is my overall point. Because we've been talking about safety in public transport and horrendous knife attacks and gun. Norman Brennan, who was on with Alex earlier, I've known Norman for nearly 3 decades. That's how long him and I have been talking about this.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. The Conservatives were gutless. All we've done is liberal policing, liberal politicians have put us all in danger. In the 70s, when the police were a bit corrupt and a bit dodgy, they treated horrible people as they deserved to be treated, so there were less of them.
Listen, Matt, on that point, thank you. 0344 499 1000. More to come in a few moments. 0344 499 1000 is the phone number and voice note number. If you want a message, 87222. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Let's move to this story, and by the way, we'll come back to more of your comments shortly. It's been revealed that Prince Andrew was offered the use of a lavish, fully staffed Abu Dhabi palace by the UAE royals. This comes after mounting pressure for him to vacate his Windsor residence, the Royal Lodge. Am I the only person that up until, maybe I haven't got my eyes open enough, I always thought the Royal Lodge was like a little woodcutter's hut somewhere tucked into the bushes, carved out of the verdant land of Windsor. And it was just a little nice sort of little place where you could have a tiny fire in the corner and nip out down a muddy track to do some fishing. I didn't realise it was a massive gaff like that. Ingrid Seward is with us, editor of Majesty Magazine and royal biographer. I do apologise on that very point, Ingrid, for the lack of my Royal Lodge knowledge, but it does sound a bit like that, doesn't it? It's like a cosy, almost Disney-like place. It's massive.
It is massive, yes. It's got 30 rooms plus, I think.
Yeah.
No, well, of course you could think it was a lodge. It could be like a fishing lodge or
that's what I had in my
mind. Lodge. I think you were thinking of a gate lodge, really, weren't you?
Yeah, 100%. But of course, we know that Prince Andrew, as he was Prince Andrew, will no longer be living there. That's factual. Where he lives next is, of course, the big question mark. And now we're hearing that there could be a beautiful palatial place for him to go in the UAE.
Well, I think there's a lot of pluses for him for doing that. It's actually where King Juan Carlos went when he was sort of exiled out of Spain, because he was in some problems with laundering some kind of money. I better be careful what I say here. Let's not say laundering, but receiving many millions of dollars. And he got himself into a few financial difficulties, and he decided to abdicate. And he went to live in Abu Dhabi, which is he actually would be a sort of semi-neighbour of Andrew if Andrew decided to go there.
Wow. I mean, that in itself is rather, what an interesting, you couldn't write that, could you? I mean,
you couldn't write it.
That is extraordinary. I mean, the one thing that's for sure, I guess it depends, and you are closer to this, Ingrid, because you've reported brilliantly on this area for many, many years. He's not going to starve, is he? I mean, let's face it, Mr. Mountbatten Windsor is not going to go away cap in hand anywhere because he'll have, he's got money, he'll have a nice apartment. He just won't have the titles, the prestige. Which hurts him most?
I think it will hurt him most not having the titles and prestige, because that's how he's always lived.
Yeah.
I mean, he was born in a palace. He was raised in a palace. I think the only time he hasn't been in full grandeur was when he was in the Royal Navy. But even then, he had subordinates to do things for him.
Sure.
I don't think Andrew's ever, certainly won't have ever been to a supermarket, although, of course, we know very famously he has been to Pizza Express. But I just don't think he's ever really stepped into the real world. I could be wrong, but I get the impression he never has.
I would, in his new life as Mr. Mountbatten Windsor, he will be, one would assume, I said, he's not going to go cap in hand, but, I mean, money's going to come from somewhere. He's not going to be short of money. Is he self-sufficient?
Well, his brother, the king, has agreed, has to agree to finance him. Because, I mean, Andrew without any money would be really, really dangerous. Because goodness knows who he'd go to borrow it next. But, I mean, the king very wisely says, I'm going to finance him. I'm going to look after him. I'm going to find him somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Because I also think that King Charles needs to have a certain amount of control over Andrew, because, you never quite know what he is going to do next. And if he's stuck away in Sandringham in a sort of small, well, it won't be that small, but a small abode, goodness knows what he might try and get up to.
Yeah.
And I think the main problem with Sandringham, to my way of thinking, is that it's going to attract a lot of press, because there's lots of there's lots of public roads running across the Sandringham estate where people are quite absolutely legally entitled to go. So they're going to be on the lookout for Andrew, because that's the picture everyone be interested in seeing.
Of course, and tacitly it still kind of connects him to the royal family, doesn't it? In that sense that, it doesn't, that there will be that feeling among some that actually he's still part of it. Look at where he lives.
Well, I think we can't get away from the fact that he is the king's brother, and he is the queen's second son. And from the moment Andrew was born in 1960, and for 20 years he was second in line to the throne. So he's lived with that kind of grandeur and that kind of, people bowing and saying yes, yes, no, sir, and then later on, Your Majesty. I think that it's second nature to him. So that's why I think this idea of the palace in Abu Dhabi might be much more appealing to him than somewhere on the Sandringham estate.
How much do you think, Ingrid, the Queen knew about his, shall we call it, his other life prior to her death?
I wouldn't really like to guess that. I imagine that he would not have told his mother anything that he was doing. Why would he? I mean, it would upset her, or she might say, well, I mean, no, you can't possibly do that. I don't think she had any idea. Because mothers often don't, and they always think that, that their sons were intelligent enough to be able to do the right thing.
And I guess in terms of reinventing one's self, that avenue is sort of closed off to him, isn't it? I'm often reminded of very different thinking behind it, but when it comes to scandals, John Profumo back in the day, who was, caught red-handed, he had to resign, and then dedicated the rest of his life to working for a charity pretty much in East London, working for the poor, and genuinely feeling, I would imagine, from perhaps a Christian responsibility that, he'd done wrong, he got caught, he has to now give back. I can't imagine Andrew ever going down that path, or ever being able to if he wanted to.
I can't imagine Andrew ever going down that path either. But I mean, we don't know what he might decide to do. But would people accept it? I mean, I can't imagine Andrew sort of scrubbing floors in an orphanage.
No,
I really can't. I mean, I just don't. I don't think anyone can change that much. I think Profumo was a very different character indeed.
True, that's true. Yeah. Well, Strictly Come Dancing are looking for new hosts. There is that, Ingrid, I suppose.
Well, he could. I'm sure he could do a fine Eights and Reel.
We will watch with interest. I'm sure the bookmakers have odds on that one happening. Ingrid, thank you for your time as ever. Ingrid Seward, editor of Majesty Magazine and royal biographer. It's kind of strange in life. There's certain things that happen, and again, never live your life through the prism of social media. Contextualise everything, double check it, triple check it, and all of that business. However, social media, I'm not against it. It can be the most entertaining thing to spend an hour, if you're sitting on a train or whatever, just reading what are clearly, bearing in mind big companies use social media. We use social media. It can have a great informative effect. You can, a friend of mine, I've said this before, who works in motor racing, initially just followed sort of 20 motor racing accounts on Twitter, whether they were drivers or teams or whatever. And he had almost like the bumper free magazine subscription to motor racing stories. It was brilliant, worked fabulous. That's how he used it. But you can just use it for the general stuff, and things get fed to you on your feed, and it can be entertaining and all the rest of it. And when you look through it and see what's there, you kind of, sometimes wonder about humanity, and other times your kind of faith in humanity is somewhat restored. So it can have both effects when it comes to that old place that used to be called Twitter and Facebook. Lots of people still send me Facebook links. Have you seen this? And there's a link to Facebook. I couldn't get into Facebook if you... I mean, even my nan gave it up, for God's sake. It was a whole different era, that one. 0344 499 1000. My point was, is there a way back for someone like Andrew? Certain jobs, certain things that can happen in certain jobs where you've got no way back. You become completely unemployable. You become undesirable. People won't touch you. Andrew would be one such person. Once in a while, somebody does make it through the weeds, and should he be given a second chance at any level? At any level? Probably not. And by all accounts, not a particularly pleasant person either. David is in Exeter on Prince Andrew. What do you think, David? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, what do I think? I'm just following on from your previous guest.
Yeah.
What did the Queen know? Did Prince Charles know? Those are valid questions. But however, there is a much bigger overarching question. What did the Royal Protection Officers know, who are one click from MI5 and MI6 constantly?
Yep.
What did MI5 know? What did MI6 know? And if they didn't, that is where the key question lays. I think Emily Maitlis is talking about this. There are bigger questions to ask.
Yeah.
Because frankly, what we're looking at, Ian, is a critical breach of security of a senior member of the royal family, and I would submit this is breaching international security. So for me, really, the question is,
so where is the breach, David? In the breach in terms of who he hung around with?
Well, how on earth do you have a second in line to the throne over a period, and then subsequent laying that close to a character of this nature in Epstein, with what he was doing and all the money laundering and etc., and where that money was coming from, and that's starting to be reported now through the Senate and Congress. Are you telling me MI5 didn't know about this? MI6 didn't know about it? This is a lapse of security on a grand scale, but more importantly, this is for me, for MI5 and MI6 and that top end of it, to lose control. Right, and I mean in the grand sense of control, like they call the head of MI6C, don't they? The grand sense of control of this situation. This is a huge security failing and such an embarrassment for the government, all the
it's a really good point, and probably not focused on enough. I remember back in the kind of 90s, or certainly in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a bit of a flurry of people. I saw this 3 or 4 times. People who pull out their phone and show a picture of them with Prince Harry in the Rose and Crown pub or whatever in Soho, because he liked to go out for a drink, or, the Arts Club in Chelsea, wherever it happened to be. And the point was always made that if you saw Prince Harry in a pub, and you'll be ahead of me on this, David, that's great, and you sat down and said, hello, Tim, can I have a selfie? Then sitting at least one table away would be a couple of blokes with guns in their pockets, right? That's
completely correct.
That's exactly how it works. So those guys, so Harry might be seen to be out having a good time just being an ordinary 20-year-old, but of course not really, because there are people who are the all-seeing eye to everything he does.
Yeah, that's completely correct. The Royal Protection Officers that are around this all the while are literally one click from MI5 and MI6 all the while. That's their job. Now, I've got a very good friend who was brought in to boost or secure Royal Protection Group with a SAS, a backup, when they had real problems with Charles and Diana. And so you understand that, these things can be seen, they can be flagged. What I'm submitting is that if MI5 and MI6, these are these big questions Emily Maitlis are talking about. There are bigger questions, and she's completely correct. If they didn't know, why didn't they? And if they did know, and it was being reported, why wasn't it acted upon? Because then you get to the Prime Minister and the Queen and the King at that point.
Of course you do. I'm also confused by the lack of names of other people that, this Epstein guy who apparently hung around with the good, the great, the most powerful, the richest and the most influential. As far as I know, Virginia Giuffre, who was, of course, was the person at the centre of all of this and sadly no longer alive, I don't think her book names names. Otherwise, we'd all be talking about it. I mean, there's some hints and all the rest of it in there. Where are all the other party goers, David?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I think the view is there's a lot more to come I mean, this is sort of beyond.
But it must be, even if, like, again, we've been talking a lot about social media. I know social media kind of adds names to it, how many people were on this kind of Lolita Express, and then every time you looked, everyone's name appeared on there at some point, no matter who they were. People were just sticking on, all sorts of celebrities. So I understand there is an obvious area where, people make stuff up. But you'd think by now, at least one anonymous whistleblower would say, yeah, I was around at that time, and the president of this country, the prime minister of that country, the CEO of that company.
I think you're completely correct. It's more evidence coming forward, but I think I'd probably conclude on this. But in terms of those security failings,
they're huge.
They are huge for all of these sorts of things, and if they think that they're going to bury that security failing with Andrew, I think they're greatly mistaken, because I think whoever's controlling the intelligence, and clearly isn't MI5 and MI6 or our government, whoever is controlling it, it leads me to believe that there is far more to come. And that could be very bad, because
there has to be, unless we're led to believe that this Epstein, was only ever friends with Prince Andrew, and Prince Andrew was the only person that met a young girl at one of his parties, which sounds preposterous and clearly not the case. David, you've raised some brilliant points. I genuinely am intrigued by this subject. Thank you, David in Exeter. And if you look at all the reports around this, and I'm going to repeat what everybody has said forever. We've certainly made the point that, considering this is meant to be industrial-scale sexual abuse of young girls, and the only person in jail is one woman, that seems remarkably... I mean, it's bizarre, right? I mean, it's so bizarre. The only person in jail... he was in jail, of course, and then he topped himself on the inside. But Maxwell is the only person, as far as I can tell, currently in jail connected to the Epstein sex abuse scandal, which we are simultaneously led to believe that was on such a scale, and went on relentlessly for years, possibly decades. And as one person, a woman, in jail. That just seems... But I'm not saying she shouldn't be, by the way. I'm just wondering... I think, like most people, how is that possible? And yet we get names where somebody says, oh, Bill Clinton's on the list, and Stephen Hawking apparently was on. A lot of people did go to the bloke's island, probably for business reasons, maybe even went for a party. Didn't necessarily go to sexually assault anybody. So there's that. But no evidence. Where is it? There are diligent journalists, I'm sure, out there looking already, rather than making stuff up. 0344 499 1000. Back on the phones with you, coming next on Talk.
We have got forensics still conducting supporting the investigation by examining the train. The train station itself is still shut. There are trains passing through, but they aren't stopping at the station itself. But I actually got here last night around just after 9 o'clock, which the incident had been dealt with at that point in time. There was a phenomenal police presence here. There must have been 20 to 30 police cars, around 10 ambulances still at that point dealing with casualties, and also four fire engines. But there was a very, very robust police response.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk. It's 5 to 3. I'll tell you about the new app in a second as well, by the way. Very exciting news. It's so exciting I don't even know where to start. But there is a new app. In fact, the old app, the talkTV app, I'm quite emotional to say it, is going to be no more. Monday, 1st of December, so you've got time to migrate. Because it was the old talkTV thing, and that, doesn't do the same thing as it used to do. So all your favourite shows, podcasts, continue over on the Talk app. So if you're watching or listening on the talkTV app right now, get it in the bin! It won't exist. It'll be like owning old currency. It won't make any sense to you. And download the Talk app from the App Store or Google Play. Do that now, and everything is tickety-boo, hunky-dory and brilliant going forward. Massive thumbs up all round to the app, people. talkTV app, dead, 1st of December. Talk Radio app is the one you need, or the Talk app it's called, just the Talk app. And you can carry on doing everything you normally do, but on the Talk app, and you can download it now. That's the Talk app, not the talkTV app. Migrate now, change, do it, quick, delete, reinstall. You get the picture. Let's go to Lenny down in Ashford. How you doing, Lenny?
I'm tickety-boo, thank you, Anna. Ian, mate,
Did you call me Anna then?
Yeah, it was a slip of the tongue.
Yeah, I want to know who Anna is, who this mysterious Anna that snuck into your subconscious.
Sorry,
there.
mate. No,
I know. I'm sure she's lovely. What are your thoughts, Lenny? What's going on?
Well, I think there's so many of us living in fear.
Yes.
Every day. And I think to restore our confidence, to get back on the trains and whatever, because people are going to be sitting there, in fear, really. And I think that a possibility, there's no reason for anybody to wear face coverings. And I think when you're on a train and you're with a lot of people wearing face coverings, they intimidate you.
So whether that is a woman wearing a religious face covering or one of those kids who likes to wear a balaclava and probably sleeps in one, whoever it is, face coverings are no-no on the train.
Well, with women, obviously that's going to be a hard one to win. But if you just said with males of any age, where with the technology on trains where there's cameras everywhere, if anything does happen, you've got the evidence that you require.
Yeah. That's true enough. Although if something like this happens, whether someone's wearing a face covering, are they likely to escape for very long? It's possible.
Well, in today's world, it's frightening when you see people, especially young men. They are very intimidating, and it's not fair. We should have to live like that.
It's a fair point, Lenny. Thank you very much indeed for that. Lenny in Ashford. Don't go away, Robert, with you shortly. We nearly forgot the voice of doom, the mystery voice with a political angle to it. You're looking for a politician, dead or alive, young or old, past, present, whatever, any party. Who is this?
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
It sounds like something from a sitcom, doesn't it? Like a Yes Minister thing. Here it is again.
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
You can message in if you want to have a crack at that. 87222. It is the mystery voice with a political taste to it. 87222 if you think you know. If we get a right answer, we'll tell you after the headlines. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Here it is again.
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
If you think you know the number. 87222. Back with more of your calls and comments. Loads to get through in the next hour. Right now, the time coming up on 3 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back to the home of common sense. That news that has been breaking throughout the course of the day. The 32-year-old man charged now with 11 counts of attempted murder after that mass stabbing on a high-speed train. The police are pursuing other areas as well prior to that attack. We'll bring you more details as we get it. And consequently, concern is rising among Brits over train safety and questions about whether the British Transport Police are spread too thinly. And if serious crimes like this are being deprioritised, you'd like to think not, but do you feel safe on public transport? Does this change the way you use public transport? Lines are open on that. And it's been revealed that a quarter of jailed foreign sex offenders come from just 5 countries. They are Romania, Pakistan, Poland, Ireland and India. The Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has said this is yet more evidence that migrants from some nationalities are more likely to commit certain crimes. I think lots of people will think, well, that's kind of interesting because there are some first world countries on that list. How has that happened? Not the usual story we hear, if you take the point. 0344 499 1000. This one from Barry in Norwich. Fed up with this. We know inconveniences airports. We are now inconvenienced with bollards in every city centre. I know they expect us to be inconvenienced at railway stations. I think it should be a now. These people really are a drain on this country. And that's the problem, isn't it? Although I was just thinking after 7/7, when it came to using, I mean, this is obviously down in London, where those multiple transport-based attacks happened, bus and tubes. The next day, people got on the tube, and some of it was in defiance. Some of it would have been down to just literally getting on with it. Some people might not have even, as odd as it might sound, actually thought about it. Others would have worked on the basic statistic that it's now less likely to happen today because of what happened yesterday. Many reasons behind it. Simon says, we are the media now. Ironically, the opinionator Ian Collins says this is this in a derogatory voice on talk radio today, but it's true. Well, I think I think the issue, Simon, is it's not that it's not another form of media, but we are the media, as distinct from, me, a lone voice. Bob in Arbroath, that used to work in a greengrocer's, has now decided to set up a YouTube channel, and quite a lot of people like his opinions, and that's brilliant. Nothing wrong with that. His opinions might be wacky. They might from time to time be not true. They might always be unsourced, but they're his opinions, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't replace all of the, Bob doesn't replace all of the media. I'm sorry, it just can't work like that. That's ridiculous to say that. It also presupposes that the rest of the media, despite there being lots of shortcomings, as there would be, and of course those shortcomings are under scrutiny because of social media. So it's weird. It's not even a battleground. Mainstream media don't look at social media and say, that's where the competition is. But there is a story there. I'm absolutely 100% would suggest there is a story there. And opinionators and polemicists are clearly going to get big audiences. I've got listeners that have got 20 times the following on Twitter that the average media person has. And that's really just based on their opinions and views. And you look at the stuff they might post, and it's either on a terrible day completely untrue. On a typical day, it's usually a bit out of context and unsourced. It's never, which is ironic considering one of the defences of so-called new media is that you don't trust the old media. You're not telling the truth. That's fine if that's your belief, and it'd be interesting to have a debate on that. But it is extraordinary that your go-to place is Bob in Arbroath, who doesn't check anything, just reposts stuff and says some things that are his opinion. And again, I don't want to cancel that or stop that because there is a new type of media. I just don't think it's the media. That is a massive distinction and a really important one. But some people will see it that way. I get it. Largely because they agree with the person that they're following. Robert's in Hertfordshire. Robert, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Regarding, there's a couple of little niggly things that sort of wound me up a little bit. The government was quick to say it wasn't terrorist related. Now, excuse me, a man running down a train with a knife is a terrorist. He's terrorising people. He might not be politically motivated, that's fair enough, but any guy who's running down a train and stabbing people is striking terror into the hearts. Now, there's something you can do about that. These train companies, they spend millions and millions and millions and millions on fare dodgers. Don't care about fare dodgers.
Yeah.
The fare dodgers are not going to stab you to death, right? So what you do is you have a huge recruitment drive on the transport police, and they've got to be policemen. They can't be security people because they might have to throw.
So would you want to, Robert? Would you want to see a copper on every train?
No. What they do is look. They can find the staff to get ticket inspectors jumping on and jumping off, right or wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so you can do the same thing. I reckon 400 or 500 ex-servicemen, ex-policemen, people who can handle themselves, ex-army. You know,
when I get off my train after work at my station, there's nearly always 6, 7, 8 inspectors. That the ones that are by the barriers. So they're there to on most journeys these days, unless you're going to jump the barrier, which clearly some, mostly kids, not always do, then it's quite hard to travel without a ticket now. So I don't know how many they catch and why it needs so many. I know it's a busy station, but nonetheless, what you're saying is in terms of numbers, we know that you can provide personnel if you really need to.
Yeah, but they've got that's just bodies on trains, but they've got face recognition software, they've got computers. I've seen they even got television programs about it, fare dodgers. I don't care about fare dodgers. Let them get on with it. What I do care about is people going mad with a knife on a train.
100%. Robert, I hear you. Thank you very much indeed for that, Robert, in Hertfordshire. Of course, fare dodgers do bother me, actually, because it does up the price of your ticket, and life is expensive enough, of course, and that factors in. And when I read this story that research has shown the average family will hand over £1.3 million in taxes over their lifetime, including a whopping £600,000 in income tax as the Chancellor seeks additional revenue. I looked at that and thought, really? And the findings come, of course, ahead of this month's budget. Rachel Reeves expected to announce further income tax increases. Of course, the Chancellor, as we famously know, has promised us that the numbers in the budget will add up and we won't be overtaxed. Have a listen to what Rachel Reeves has previously said.
Our tax rises coming down the track.
Yeah, but I think that this government are making... in terms of the ambition of this government, it is big.
But you agreed, yes, there are tax rises coming down the track.
Well, I was really clear during the general election campaign, and we discussed this many times, that I would always make sure that the numbers add up.
Can you promise the British people you're not going to get stuck in a doom loop of having to go through this cycle every year of having to find more tax to fill the black hole?
Nobody wants that cycle to end more than I do, Sam. That's why that is why we're putting all the effort into growing our economy, because that in the end is what brings in the tax revenues to be able to afford to keep taxes low.
Brilliant bit of economic thinking. At the end there, apologies. That was the Chancellor, by the way. Let's speak with Michael Simmons, economics editor of The Spectator. I do apologise to you as well, Michael. No guest should have to sit through that prior to coming on. You're probably feeling slightly bilious as we speak.
Yeah, well, I've watched that clip and similar clips probably a bit too many times now, and it just gets more depressing each time you watch it.
Yeah, and you can't unsee it, obviously, but it's only when you sort of hear it a second, you think, I mean, I know politicians have a PhD in not answering questions, but I mean, that was an absolute masterclass at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's bizarre is, she won't be clear on this. Yeah, every day that you read the papers now, someone from the Treasury has leaked the latest kite that they're going to fly.
Right, we're going to try, Michael, we're going to try and get you back on a better line because that one is obviously gone Wonksville Central, as the technical phrase goes. If you knew that, teach your kids. Let's just do some comment while we're trying to get Michael back on. Gary says, I served 10 years in the British Army and would not go and fight for the country as long as Starmer is Prime Minister. What a disgrace of a man, Ian says. Gary, lots of similar comments to that. Does he have our backs, I think, is the overarching point there. We've got Michael back with us. Sorry, the old gremlins got into the mix there, Michael. I can't remember where you were when you were cut off in your prime, but we were looking, I suppose, at the overarching competence of our Chancellor.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, we've got this bizarre sort of uncertainty that she's created now, where she won't answer these questions clearly because she doesn't want to declare that she's going to have to break this manifesto pledge until the budget. But on the other hand, every time you read a newspaper, there's a new kite that's been flown by the Treasury, or maybe it's 2p on income tax here, maybe it's a threshold move there. And the result is just this massive amount of uncertainty that's scaring markets, it's scaring voters, and it means that no one's making financial decisions.
Yeah. And on top of all of this, as I just read out there at the beginning, Michael, I mean, as if that's not bad enough, that we're in a very sort of a sort of suspended state of, I don't want to use the word anticipation because that sort of smacks of excitement is to come, and I don't think there is any of that, but we're in this place where, you know, you think, okay, any economy can go through a bit of a bumpy road, and we understand that. Most of us know that, you know, the world, the sort of capitalist way that Western economies operate means that there's going to be bumps once in a while, so we all understand that as well. But then when you realise we're paying 1.3 million quid over the course of our lifetime to Rachel Reeves and predecessors and those that subsequently take the job, it does stick in the back of the throat somewhat.
Yeah, and look, I think ultimately this Chancellor, this budget is just putting off the inevitable. Now, the public might say that they want, you know, the rich to pay more tax, but when they realise that actually the rich is soon going to have to include most of them, then people won't want to keep paying more tax.
Yeah.
And the fundamental problem is we just spend far too much. Even if she does massive tax hikes, we'd still be spending more than we bring in. And eventually a government, a chancellor, is going to have to confront that fact, because you cannot just keep raising taxes to get your way out of this problem. This is where the doom loop phrase comes from, because the increased taxes will reduce growth, which means next time she's got another hole to fill, and it just keeps going on. Well, at some point it has to stop.
Yeah, and another story that kind of links to all of this, because, you know, chancellors always look for, you know, is there another way? Is there a little avenue? And that little secret file that I think we've talked about before that sits in the Treasury, whether it's about pasties or caravans and places chancellors dared not go, but sometimes they have to. But of course, there's now a whole new opening for chancellors, and that's things like carbon taxes, because you can do this with a bit of impunity on the basis that actually, you know, this is a moral crusade as well as a financial one, and that's what tends to happen here.
Well, yeah, if she did that, that would be the most short-sighted, disastrous thing. I mean, if you go back to the roots of our economic problems, it's because we don't have any growth. And the reason we don't have any growth is because we don't have productivity growth. And you go one step further, well, why are our industries not growing? Why is business output not growing? And a large part of that is because of how staggeringly expensive our energy and our electricity costs are. And part of the reason they're so expensive is because of green levies, green taxes, etc. So, you know, it's all well and good saying you want to save the planet, but if you destroy the economy, you know, in the process, then what's the point of any of it? So doing an increased carbon tax would be so insane, I don't even think Rachel Reeves would go there.
Yeah. Do you think her credibility, though, is shot after the landlord licence scandal of last week? I mean, it's rather interesting that on the very week that the Renters' Rights Bill became the Renters' Rights Act, and I was, curiously, last Wednesday hosting a debate with landlords at Old Billingsgate at the Landlord Investment Show the day before this news broke, and we were talking about, I mean, the whole thrust of the debate in this area, Michael, was really about rules and regulations, the amount of regs, and, you know, are landlords across the new way things work? And I know things can differ postcode to postcode. And then 24 hours later, our own Chancellor gets collared for not having the correct paperwork in place, which is applicable to the borough of Southwark, where she's renting. It might not be applicable in other boroughs, but it was to hers. Now, that in itself might, to some people, just be, well, you know, it's very, you know, with a plethora of regulations in this, what used to be a very simple area of renting out a house, it's very easy to forget something. But this story gets murkier almost, in the sense that we seem to have first heard one excuse and then another one and then another one, and it's now quite apparent that there were lots of people saying, no, you need a licence and you better get it done now. Does this dent the credibility of a chancellor to the point that accusation of incompetence goes to the next level?
Well, I think unusually, I'm sympathetic to the Chancellor here, because it does seem fairly clear that the letting agent had said, "Oh, we're handling this," and then didn't handle it. On the other hand, you know, in a way, it's a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, this, as you say, is just yet another piece of red tape, a secret way for a council to get a tax. So it's Reeves experiencing how annoying this bureaucracy is. But I think wider than the story, she is in a kind of safe position because of how we saw the markets react in the summer when she got upset in the Commons. I mean, I think had Keir Starmer wanted to use this to get rid of her, then he probably could have. But I think she's basically in the clear because it's a minor case. But hopefully she learns, you know, how difficult for everyone else these regulations are.
And what I can never get my head around, Michael, and I say this with the Angela Rayner thing, you'd think that when you work in government at a senior level, as Rayner did, as Rachel Reeves clearly does, that there would somehow be, you know, a department somewhere, there'd be a bloke called the Run This Past Me department, that anything you were doing in life, whether you were buying, you know, some finance deal because you were getting a new car, a house, anything connected, you just hand over the whole lot and go, right, run through this, have I ticked every box? Because it's not as if we haven't seen this play out 1,000 times before in different ways and different scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm completely against government wastage and silly spending. However, sometimes we take that too far. I mean, think back to when Boris Johnson was dying of COVID and there's not like a private Downing Street doctor. I mean, clearly there should be things like a private doctor in Downing Street. And clearly there should be some sort of special advisor or a civil servant whose job is to handle the life admin things of these parts. Like, the Chancellor should be focusing on trying to sort the economy out, not dealing with the house that she doesn't currently live in. So I wouldn't decry the government if they spent a small amount of money on having someone whose job it was to sort all these things out.
Or rather annoyingly, there probably is somebody who's already got a job that you could say, well, Bob over there's been in the civil service for 100 years. He's never done a day's work in his life, so maybe he can do it. So
exactly.
there's somebody there already on the paybook, I think. Michael, thank you as ever. Michael Simmons, he's the economics editor at The Spectator. I actually share his initial view on the landlord licence thing. Now, not every landlord in every borough was required to have a licence. So it differs what some councils have it, some don't have it. There's now going to be a new landlord portal as part of the new Renters' Rights Act, which is kind of it's a database to register your landlordness, and if you don't, then you can be fined. And the fines are, you know, they're pretty darn brutal. I mean, you could walk into a pub and, you know, punch half a dozen people in the face and wouldn't get fined the same amount of money as you would get fined for not registering on the new landlord portal. It's not. The Act is being given royal assent, but it's not in action just yet. And so up until now, some boroughs have a licence system and some don't. And it's also relatively new-ish, even in the ones that do. So it's never been. And also, you're renting out a bloody house, for God's sake. You know, it's a house. You've got an agreement, you've got an estate agent. There's loads of landlords that have fallen foul of that one. But she is the Chancellor. And I'm sorry, you are held to a greater level of accountability if you have a very senior role in government. I don't think that's too much to ask, is it? And if you can't do it yourself, you're in the flipping Treasury, for God's sake. You're not telling me. I mean, when Rayner got collared on a housing tax, when she was literally the housing minister, I mean, I still, in my head, think that's something I dreamt. She couldn't have made that cack up. And similarly with this, she's the flipping Chancellor. There's got to be a few bean counters around. You go, Reg, could you just check over? Have I done? Yep. Tick the boxes. Thank you very much. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
we have got forensics still conducting supporting the investigation by examining the train. The train station itself is still shut. There are trains passing through, but they aren't stopping at the station itself. But I actually got here last night around just after 9 o'clock, which the incident had been dealt with at that point in time. There was a phenomenal police presence here. There must have been 20 to 30 police cars, around 10 ambulances still at that point dealing with casualties, and also four fire engines. But there was a very, very robust police response.
It's the first time I, can recollect this sort of incident on a train where you can't exactly get off. It's like an aeroplane in that regard, isn't it? You can't exactly get off. But what I would say is quite often when you go to train stations at night or in the evening like this was, you see the gates open, don't you, all the time. And I doubt this individual actually bought a ticket, right? I mean, I'm speculating. But maybe if we had better security at train stations where gates were consistently closed, where there are access
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Should we do the Voice of Doom? Let's see. We didn't do the payoff of the Voice of Doom, did we? Remember the voice? It seems a distant memory ago now, doesn't it? That we had a mystery voice, day one, brand new voice. Let's have a listen to the voice.
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
Can we hear it again, Amy?
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
Ungenerous and inaccurate. We did have some guesses, but I can't find them anywhere. No, you're not up. It's not update. So Alicia is producing today. I use that term very loosely, by the way. She's just put it up there. There it is. These are some of the guesses. John Redwood. Can we hear that again?
Ungenerous and inaccurate.
It's got a bit of Redwood about it, but it's not John Redwood. Jim Pryor, no. Bob Holness. Now, Bob Holness used to present Blockbusters, of course. I think he went to school with my mum or something. Neville Chamberlain. It's not that far back. It is not. Jonathan Aitken. Interesting guess. No. Which means we have no correct answer. So it rolls over to tomorrow. And tomorrow, of course, is another day. And who knows? With the Voice of Doom, here's the strangest thing about the Voice of Doom. It happened last week when we think we've got the one that's going to go on for, we thought about 100 years. And it went after 4 days. It happens. Watch tomorrow or listen tomorrow, 2:45. Now, UK taxpayers are backing a £200 million carbon market scheme, providing offsets to big companies, despite official warnings of greenwashing risks, as a £180 million forest carbon deal in Brazil faces legal challenges and concerns grow over the effectiveness of REDD plus schemes, whatever that is. Joining me now is the Deputy Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford. Andrew, whatever I just read out, I can't even think of the finer details. It sounds like something that's going to be horrific for the taxpayers somewhere.
Well, of course, the whole of net zero is horrific for the taxpayer, yes, and for the bill payer as well. But yeah, this is just one small aspect of it. Although, of course, it's many billions of pounds of your money and my money. It's one of these things where I think the bureaucracy is running amok. They're completely out of control. They've got a huge pot of money to spend, and so they're throwing it at anything they can overseas so that they get more money again next year. And they don't actually care whether it makes any difference to anybody or does any good at all. I mean, some of these stories are horrific. I mean, trying to rewild Ugandan wetlands. I mean, did you see that story? I mean, that was absolutely horrific. We have people starving now because we've turned their croplands into wildlands. I mean, this is absolutely immoral. And somebody should be holding the civil servants and the ministers, for that matter, to account. They should not be doing this. This money would be better off cut and kept in the UK and spent on people here.
Yeah, I mean, it is bizarre, isn't it, that, I mean, we often talk about the vanity of the human race, and this is, I suppose, for those that are really into this stuff, takes it to other levels. The idea that we are going to change the weather and the climate by planting some stuff in Uganda is, I mean, there is a word for it that I can't say, obviously, on air, but you know the one. I mean, it's just an absolute nonsense.
It's pure narcissism, isn't it? It's this sort of messiah complex that some of these people have. I mean, whether that is actually the case for the civil servants, I don't know. The civil servants may not have the messiah complex. They may just be going, if we get more money coming through, that's my job for another 12 months until I can get some more money through the year after. But I mean, Ed Miliband at the end of the day is authorising this stuff, and it's billions and it's billions and it's billions. And people in this country are screaming because they can't afford to pay their energy bills. You know, we're deindustrialising, and he's throwing money people overseas. I mean, this is crazy.
And it's quite extraordinary, of course, because when it comes to, you know, looking after nature and the like, it's clear that no such moral element exists when it comes to COP30, where, of course, they've chopped down God knows how much forest in order to make a motorway for VIPs to get to a I mean, if you ever want an example of thinking someone's taking the pee out of me here, because I mean, they could have held this conference anywhere they like. There's plenty of hotels. They happen to have it in the middle of a rainforest. They had to chop half of it down to make a road and to make it all look nice and lovely for everybody to get there. We understand, though, just a word on this, if you would, the King is not going, but Prince William is going instead. I'm sure we're going to get the same old. What are we expecting from the heir to the throne?
Yeah, I mean, the heir to the throne will sort of, I guess he'll say what he's told to say, but I mean, he seems to have green tinges to him. I don't think he's quite as sort of wild as his father is, but yeah, he does say a lot of green things, and I think as the wheels come off net zero, I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, is this really a good idea for the royal family to keep on doing this? You know, people are going to net zero is becoming poisonous. You know, the idea is becoming poisonous. People are seeing the harm it's causing. And for the royal family to be promoting the idea is probably a very big mistake. It will come back to bite them, I think, and they will regret it.
I will put some of these points to Dale Vince when I speak to him tomorrow and wonder what he has to say on this. Andrew, great to have you on. Thank you, Andrew Montford. He is, of course, Deputy Director at Net Zero Watch. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On the app. On your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about the BBC in just a second as well. There's a lot to be said about the increase in our, get this, an increase in your TV licence. I didn't think they would go there this time around, but apparently they do. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Roger Bolton, among others, will join us. Catherine's in Oxfordshire. This is on Reeves and taxes, Catherine. What have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Well, I'm literally just outside now on the farm, and I'm just...
Oh, I thought you meant outside my building. I think it was slightly worrying there for a second.
No. What I would like to say was I'm sick of the left-leaning Resolution Foundation who are all advising Rachel Reeves, these academics and data, analysts, I suppose they must be, working out what the tax is going to be when they've never done a proper job in their lives.
Yeah.
None of this cabinet, none of this government, none of these advisors have ever had to get up in the morning, earn a living like the rest of us, and then we're the ones that they're taxing. I mean, I think a mansion tax, if they bring that in, is totally cruel. Have these people got families of their own? And I'm just and net zero. We pay all this money, they keep taxing us to the hill.
You're saving the planet, Catherine. Have some consideration for Mother Nature.
Yeah, well, farmers do that, but they're trying to sell our land off to BlackRock when our families can't pay. And I think it's absolutely outrageous. And talk about Rachel Reeves crying in Parliament. I cried it when I thought, that's how I felt when my father-in-law came to this farm with barely anything, built it up, 3 generations, and my sons might lose it and have no job. They don't understand.
I think there was a massive misreading of the room in some respects on the farmers' issue. But of course, perhaps from a party political point of view, Labour are quite relaxed about that. They are working on the basis, I would assume, that most landowners of whatever gradient are not likely to vote for them anyway. Maybe it's that. Catherine, thank you very much indeed. I certainly share, and I can hear the upset in your voice in describing that situation, which is the story of many people who work the land and have farmed for generations, got no desire to flog it and then go and live in Barbados with the money they made. They just want to carry it on. Let's move to this story then. BBC licence fee rising to just over £181 from £174.50. This reflects inflation for September, 3.8%. Let's get two voices on this. Roger Bolton, former BBC executive, regularly helps us out on these kind of stories. And Robert Aitken, former BBC journalist. Good afternoon to you both. I mean, Roger, firstly, we've spoken about the licence many times before. I would have kind of thought that by now, the BBC themselves would have said, look, changing times, digital world and all that, we already get £174.50. It would be wrong at this time, certainly in the current climate, to ask for any more. Have they missed a trick here at the Beeb?
No, they haven't. The licence fee has been frozen for some years, and its value is probably 30% in real terms, maybe 35% less than it was 10 to 15 years ago. So the BBC is squeezed. What this government has simply done is to say, we'll let it increase, as other things, by the rate of inflation, while we make our mind up about the future of funding of the BBC and what it's supposed to do. What we're all waiting for, this is in essentially just stabilising the situation where it is. And what's supposed to happen, should have happened by now, should happen before Christmas, is a green paper, which is about the future of the BBC, the licence fee, the charter, and what we'll pay for it, and indeed whether there should be a licence fee. So I think this is, if they hadn't had this increase, they'd have to continue cutting.
Did you say, Roger, that quantifiably 30% greater value for money?
No, I did not. I said that the value of the licence fee in real terms has gone down by 30 to 35%. So that's why the BBC is cutting back. So when people say there's nothing on the telly, well, one of the reasons it's less on the telly is because there's less money. But, Robin and I agree on a lot of this, actually, that what we really need is a debate about whether we need public service broadcasting, whether we have got need an independent news service and how we should pay for it.
And Robert, you're with us as well, former BBC journalist. Nice to have you with us. You know your way around a newsroom, that's for sure, and you know the BBC incredibly well. Changing times, I think we all acknowledge that. Quite hard to defend a TV licence. I tried for years and years. But do you concur with Roger's point that, in fact, you know, they've had this freeze, so the value of it has gone down, and so this is, you know, not entirely unexpected that we would get a bit of a rise now?
Well, looked at, Ian, thank you for asking. I mean, looked at purely as an economic proposition, you know, this modest increase in the licence fee is in line with inflation. You can't really complain about that if you agree that the licence fee is a fair impost. Problem with the licence fee is basically this, that the licence fee has only become controversial because a lot of people feel that the BBC is not fair to them. So if you are, like Roger is, a decent, liberal thinking, left of centre person, then the BBC provides excellent value for money because you get a news service which is entirely tailor-made to your measurements. If, on the other hand, you're someone like me, who is a right of centre person, you find that the BBC consistently fails to recognise or reflect your viewpoint, my viewpoint, that is. And therefore, for me, the BBC licence fee fails in this sense. The licence fee is a privilege. It's a privilege because in return for what is supposed to be an impartial news service, the BBC is allowed to impose on all of us with the television set a licence fee, an obligation, a legal obligation to pay for the BBC. But as the BBC consistently refuses to actually live up to its declaration of being impartial, it's not fair. And that's the problem.
And
well,
Roger,
hold on, Robin.
Roger, respond to that. I mean, I'm paraphrasing Robin here with a bit of mischief. The BBC newsrooms are crammed with sizzling lefties. What's going on, Roger?
Oh, nothing's going on, Vic. Look, he's no idea what my politics are. I don't think anybody else knows what my politics are. I just prefer the pursuit of the truth, if you can, and often a range of opinions. Now, the other thing we should remember here, by the way, we should remember here, is that we're talking about a licence fee. What you're paying for is actually not just television, not just regional television, local journalism, not just Radio 4, Radio 3, Radio 2, not just the World Service largely, not just the website. I mean, it's called a licence fee. For one cappuccino a week, you're getting all of this. Now, the problem is, and it is a fundamental problem, that people don't have an option about paying for the licence fee. And it's true, as there's more entertainment from Netflix and others offered, some people resent having to pay it. The problem we have is that most of the other ways of paying for this have flaws. But we're starting in the wrong place. What we should start is, do we need a BBC-type organisation? What do we want it to be? Does it need to change for us to support it? And then how do you pay for it? You shouldn't start with the payment. Know what you're paying for before you decide how much you should pay for it. The licence fee is in crisis because increasingly people do not want to pay it and people have stopped paying it. But do we want, my perspective is, do we want as a country to television, radio, whatever, we can educate people. We can give them the ways of looking at disinformation. We can prepare, we have a real problem with engineers and scientists in the country. Public service broadcasting could address that. There's our history. We need to know where we came from and where others came from. Do we want a public service broadcaster to do that? Well, I do. Well, so let's define what we want, then decide how to deliver it, and then decide how to pay for it.
We might define it, Roger, and come back with, well, we don't really want much of that because it's all being beautifully provided by, when ITV cancelled the South Bank show, many people in the sort of the arty world, as it were, including Melvin himself, thought that, that the planet was about to end. And, Sky Arts came along and started doing stuff that was, frankly, really rather impressive and a great example of why, I know that's not the BBC, the South
No,
Bank.
no,
I'm just talking about
right.
choice.
Ian, that's not right.
But it's choice, right? It's choice provided elsewhere.
No, yeah, if there was a choice. No, it's not wrong about Sky Arts. Sky Arts has done a brilliant job, but essentially on a very small budget, it brings around programming from the world and archive and other things. I think it's a wonderful thing, but it does not have the resources and has not done a lot of original creative programming. It's a great addition, but it's not a replacement. And I think, if we say, do we want people to... Well, I know Robin is a Christian, as I'm a Christian, as it happens. But, if you want to understand, go in a church or a cathedral or art, and you want to understand what are these things that are portrayed? What's the significance of Mary? Who is she? What is she? If you want to learn about this, how are we going to ensure that our children, others, know about it? We have to have, and now, in my view, a public service broadcaster that gives us, if you like, or helps us understand our own cultures.
OK, I actually thought you were going to say, and on the third day, God invented the BBC for a second. Robin, I mean, is your contention on this that it's just about the news element that you find uncomfortable, or is it the entire concept and the notion of the licence fee?
Well, first I should apologise, of course, to my friend Roger Bolton for assuming that he is in some way a lefty. Although, I have to say, to me, he's always been BBC man incarnate. And
worked at Channel 4 for a while as well.
Oh, yeah, I got fired for the BBC.
Yes, but the point is this. Look, you and I, Roger, have had long conversations about this. I've had a couple of long debates about this. And there is a fundamental problem with the BBC, and it is that it does not properly represent, it does not properly reflect the total range of political opinion in the country.
But Robin, if that's true, the key question is, do you think you can reform it? Is it worth reforming, Robin?
Well,
Robin.
I have always been somebody who, up to now, I have always been somebody who has been in favour of reforming the BBC. To conform with its promise to us as licence fee payers that it will be impartial. And up to now, it hasn't been able to do that. Now, let me just say that I have always been a believer in the idea of a national, universally available public service broadcaster, which provided an impartial news service, because I think in a developed democracy like ours, a sophisticated democracy, that sort of news source is really invaluable. It's invaluable. If you could have a truly impartial news service, that would benefit any democracy, including ours. The problem is that the BBC has failed in that mission.
Yes,
and that is the problem with it.
Robin, is it worth using the present moment, where the Green Paper is coming up in broadcasting, where the BBC's charter is coming up, to actually say, let's make a big effort to see if it can be what you want it to be? Now, we have different views. I think it's far better than you suggest. But let's not throw it away. Because look what happens when you throw it away. Look what happens when you throw it away in the States and elsewhere.
Robin, brief answer if you could, Robin.
Yes. Well, Conservatives are not in the business of tearing down venerable institutions. On the contrary, we should treasure and build up institutions. But every institution, be it the church, be it the BBC, whatever it is, from time to time needs an overhaul, a proper reform.
Yes.
And that's what the BBC needs.
Okay.
If the BBC can be properly reformed, I think that the licence fee... Let me end on this note. I think that 180 quid, the BBC, is good value for money, because I pay more than double that for the sports service I have. And that is something I only use intermittently. The BBC provides a huge range of very valuable programming, but it has to sort itself out politically. Okay. That's the problem.
On that point, gentlemen, thank you. Great to have you both on. I know you're old buddies of old. That's Roger Bolton, former BBC executive, and Robin Aitken, former BBC journalist. One centre left, one left of centre, apparently, and one right of centre, with slightly nuanced views on the BBC and its future. The one thing I think we can all agree on is, frankly, here we are in 2025. Whatever you think of the BBC, whether it could be rebranded, reconstructed, rewired, recalibrated, whatever you want to call it, there's no way, not a chance in hell, that this organisation should be putting the licence fee up right now. I don't care whether it's had a freeze. I don't care whether it's linked to inflation. I don't care about any of that. They should be actively looking at ways to reduce the licence fee, and the starting point should be right. We're going to halve it, see what you can do with that money, and come back to us. That'd be a good start. 0344 499 1000. Second point, by the way, scrap it. This is Talk.
Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. I can tell you that these are the first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Both were born in the United Kingdom.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back, the home of common sense. Peter Cardwell's going to be here at 4 o'clock, and he will pop into this studio and tell us more in just a couple of moments. First, Richard, down in London on tax. Richard, what's going on, mate?
Hey, Ian, I've
think sometimes I get the Roy Keane slots at the end, which is to kind of say something unpopular. A bit like what upsets everybody as a pundit on football. The problem here is we've been living beyond our means as a country for so long that we actually don't realise something. Even under the Conservatives, the spend per family, government spending per family, was £42,000 a year. So if you put that over, if you put that over 60 years, it means the government is spending £2.5 million per family over just 60 years.
So the government spend more on us than we spend, is your point?
Well, and of course, I think where these think tanks, I mean, they should know a lot better than this, Ian, because they should be making the point that actually 1% of people pay about 28% of the income tax take anyway. So there's a guy called Alistair Heath who writes for the Telegraph.
Yeah, I know.
He says basically we want Swedish-level public services, but we only want to pay LA-style taxes. And I think it's important because things like the NHS things like the state pension, it's simply unaffordable.
Do we have to just be honest then and go, you know, Rachel Reeves and we're not going to raise tax, and then the Tories say, no, she's going to raise tax? Do we just have to go, do you know what, top rate of tax is going to be 60% and that's it?
Yeah. Well,
do we have to go there?
Ian, I think I'd love somebody to actually say, look, the state pension is not affordable. The NHS now employs 1.8 million people. That's not affordable. State education is not affordable, Ian, because we spend £7,000 per pupil per year. Now, some families, if you look at the figures on this, there are some families that don't even pay £5,000 income tax in 1 year. So state education is not
some don't spend it in a lifetime.
Well, well, I also think what would be really good, this is slightly utopian, but I actually think it would be really good if people said, look, I don't want these services anymore. I want a pay-as-you-go tariff, so that I'll say to the government, well, OK, I'll choose a tariff. And obviously that would involve, for instance, not being able to get housing benefit or child benefit. So what I'm saying is, I don't want you to spend the 42k in the first place. You know what I mean? It's the other way around. Rather than taxing people, let's go to government and say, actually, no, we don't want you to spend this money. And of course, the other way it could work is that if enough high earners leave the country, the government one day will simply have to say, well, sorry, we can't afford the bills anymore. So when you walk up at the GP practice next week, you're going to have to pay £50. It'll be £50 a session because we've driven away all the people that are paying the taxes. But people have got to. I think the think tank is naughty for sort of telling people, "Oh, poor people, you're victims, you're victims."
So I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying. That we've just got. So we need a bit of a reality check on the kind of services we have, what they can provide, and what we're willing to pay, I guess. Listen, Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. Peter Cardwell is with us, which is why I had to cut Richard short. It was a very good debate about taxation, realities of taxation.
Of course, yeah, and reforms, economic plans that Nigel Farage has been talking about today. Yes. We'll be talking about. Why can't he say